February is finally drawing to a close, even if it does have one extra day this year. Apparently, someone who is born on February 29th is called a leapling. Traditionally in Ireland, February 29th is Bachelor's Day, where women were allowed and encouraged to propose to men. If the guy refused, he had to pay recompense in the form of money, a new dress, gloves, and so on. This custom at one time even had legal basis in Ireland and Scotland. Since this leap year contains a solar eclipse for us, I thought I would check on how many eclipses have ever taken place on Bissextile Day. Yes, that is the term for February 29th, meaning the second sixth day or the double sixth day. Let's start with the first recorded solar eclipse on February 29th in the year 0356 BCE. This particular leap year was also special in that 2 weeks earlier, on February 14th, it was preceded by a penumbral lunar eclipse. Of course, Valentine's Day hadn't even been invented yet. In case any of our viewers notice the TD time given in the diagram, what is TD time? Is it the time that Toronto Dominion Bank opens? TD time stands for Terrestrial Dynamical Time, the modern astronomical time standard defined by the International Astronomical Union. It's used for time measurements of astronomical observations made from the surface of the Earth. Terrestrial Dynamical Time is a uniform time scale free of the irregularities of mean solar time. Also known as terrestrial time, TT, the Astronomical Almanac uses TT for its tables of positions of the Sun, Moon, and planets as seen from Earth. The next February 29th eclipse we come across is a partial solar eclipse, which happened in the year 128. It was visible in South America and Africa. It only takes another 76 years before we have the next solar eclipse on February 29th, and this is in the year 184. This is again a partial solar eclipse. It was visible in Europe, Eurasia, and North Africa. On February 29th in the year 648, there was an annular eclipse in the Antarctic and off the coast of Australia. It might have looked a little bit like this picture. The photo is taken of a total solar eclipse that happened on December 4th, 2021, because of course there were no cameras in the year 648. Let's fast forward to the year 1188 and voila! Another solar eclipse happens on February 29th. This eclipse was an annular eclipse visible in Australia, Papua New Guinea, and Hawaii. But we will have to wait until another 1,228 years have passed before there is another solar eclipse on precisely February 29th. This will be in the year 2416. I will not be here. February 29th, 2872 will be the last solar eclipse on February 29th before the year 3000. The weird thing about focusing on February 29th is that next year, on April 8th, 2025, we will all be able to remember where we were watching the solar eclipse of April 8th this year, 2024. Fingers crossed. But there is no year ago, or what were you doing a year ago, for any day numbered February 29th. It totally disappears, only to resurface every 4 years. The best story about an eclipse on February 29th has to be Christopher Columbus's. It wasn't a solar eclipse, it was a lunar eclipse, but it saved his life. Actually, the true honor of coming to the Admiral's rescue was Johannes Müller von Königsberg, who lived 1436 to 1476, known by his Latin pseudonym Regiomontanus. He was a highly regarded German mathematician, astronomer, and astrologer. Before his death, Regiomontanus published an almanac containing astronomical tables covering the years 1475 to 1506. Thanks to an epidemic of shipworms eating holes in the planking of his fleet, Columbus was forced to abandon 2 of his ships and finally had to beach his last 2 caravels on the north coast of an island now known as Jamaica on June 25, 1503. At first, everyone got along famously, but eventually Columbus and his crew wore out their welcome with the natives of the island. Columbus had a copy of Regiomontanus's almanac with him. He soon discovered from studying its tables that on the evening of Thursday, February 29, 1504, a total lunar eclipse would occur beginning around the time of moonrise. Armed with this knowledge, 3 days before the eclipse, Columbus requested a meeting with the Arawak chief and informed him that his Christian God was very angry with his people for no longer supplying him and his men with food. Therefore, he was about to provide a clear sign of his displeasure. 3 nights hence, he would all but obliterate the rising full moon, making it appear inflamed with wrath, which would signify the evils that would soon be inflicted upon all of them. You might call this a bad moon horizon. On the appointed evening, as the sun set in the west and the moon started emerging from beyond the eastern horizon, it was plainly obvious to all that something was terribly wrong. By the time the moon appeared in full view, a small but noticeable dark scallop had been removed from its lower edge. And just over an hour later, as evening twilight ended and full darkness descended, the moon indeed exhibited an eerily inflamed and bloody appearance. In place of the normally brilliant late winter full moon, there now hung a dim red ball in the eastern sky. According to Columbus's son Ferdinand, the Arawaks were terrified at this sight, and with great howling and lamentation came running from every direction to the ships laden with provisions and beseeching the admiral to intercede with his God on their behalf. They promised that they would happily cooperate with Columbus and his men if only he would restore the moon back to its normal self. The explorer told the natives that he would have to retire to confer privately with his God. He then shut himself in his cabin for about 50 minutes. While in his quarters, Columbus turned an hourglass every half hour to time the various stages of the eclipse based on the calculations provided by Regiomontanus's almanac. Just moments before the end of the total phase, Columbus reappeared, announcing to the Arawaks that his God had pardoned them and would now allow the moon to gradually return. And at that moment, true to Columbus's word, the moon slowly began to reappear, and as it emerged from the earth's shadow, the grateful Arawaks hurried away. They then kept Columbus and his men well supplied and well fed until a relief caravel from Hispaniola arrived on June 29, 1504. Columbus and his men returned to Spain on November 7th. The moral of this story? Make astronomy your hobby. It may save your life.